Well, Chris, 4 weeks, 4 losses for the Carolina Panthers. This one, a 21-13 loss to the Minnesota Vikings at Bank of America Stadium, where you are right now. And Chris, go ahead. It stinks. Just go ahead and say it. It stinks. It stinks.
It does. And I was going to say, I'm glad that they have an early bye week this year because they're going to absolutely need it. And it's coming in 2 weeks. Coming in 3 weeks, actually.
They need a bye week to fix red zone execution, protecting Bryce Young. Bryce Young actually taking care of the football himself. He wasn't perfect. He was fine, but he wasn't perfect. And also, can we work on freaking, late half, red zone 2-minute stuff? Can we work on that? Clock management, people. Hello, thank you. Okay, well, you know what? Before we do all that, let's break it down. Let's get the suckers.
The state of North Carolina covers 53,000 square miles. It is the habitat of the feared Carolina Panthers. Get dialed in, Panthers fans, for an in-depth look at your team, exclusive interviews, locker room insight. Let's huddle up for Panthers Playbook. Here are your hosts, Dennis Cox and Chris Lea.
Welcome back to Panthers Playbook. That's Chris Lea, Dennis Cox here with you. 21-13, Carolina Panthers lose to the Minnesota Vikings. Again, we're going to break everything down from red zone execution. I'm sorry, lack of red zone execution. Let's be honest. Call it what it is, Chris. The terrible clock management that we have still seen from a head coach that has been a head coach in this league for multiple years in Frank Reich. Bryce still not taking care of the football. And 5 sacks allowed in the second half. And also a run defense, Chris, that just gave up a lot of yards against a team that hasn't run the ball well at all this season.
Yeah.
There's a lot that needs to be fixed. Before we get into all that, make sure you smash that subscribe button here on YouTube. Leave your comments and your thoughts on tonight's or on this afternoon's game in the comment section. Hit the likes as well. We'll interact with you, of course. All right, Chris. Panthers led this one 10-0. Sam Franklin, pick 6. I was like, you know what? That's the first time we really felt like a juice play, right? Like it's something that gets the juices flowing, that big splash play. First time it felt like all season that we really had something big like that. And I was like, man, feeling pretty good here. Feeling pretty good. And then it kind of just went slowly downhill from there.
It did, but Dennis, and one of the things, if you notice, first off, all 13 points came in the first half for the Carolina Panthers. So nothing in the second half, right? And that was one of the issues that we talked about with Matt Rule last year. It's one of the things we kept talking about. Like, they really don't have a second half push. And then outside of the first offensive drive for the Carolina Panthers, the defense is thanks for 10 of those 13 points. Yeah. Think about it. You got the pick 6, then you got Kamu Grugier-Hill who gets the interception that leads to a field goal. Other than that, it was just the first drive for the Carolina Panthers, which led to points. Their offense is just not doing anything when it comes down to generating points or putting the other defense in any type of stress right now. And so that's one of the things that, like, a lot of fans are just getting frustrated with right now. If you look at Twitter, look on social media, they're wondering what's going on, especially we were sold on this coaching staff, right? This was supposed to be an offensive coaching staff with all kinds of, credibility and all kinds of experience in the league, and yet we're not seeing it right now for a team that was supposed to only be a quarterback away.
Yeah, that's what we were told. That's what we were sold on, right? Was that bill of goods. But clearly it's not there. Like, clearly this team is not as close as they thought they were.
No,
they're not as close as they thought they were. And honestly, we all thought last year, it's like, yeah, you're a quarterback away last year from winning a very weak division. But
quarterback away last year under Steve Wilkes. Let's say that.
Exactly. There's caveats to this. So let's take everything into consideration. All right. So I will say this. In the second half, that first drive by the Carolina Panthers, Bryce Young they were just slowly, but matriculating the ball down the field, I should say, methodically moving the ball down the field. And it was Bryce with his arm, but again, it's a lot of underneath stuff, just picking up 6, 7 yards, 8 yards, but they got first downs and kept things moving. But then Bryce happened. I'm not going to look, here's the thing. I'm not putting it all on Bryce Young. I'm not going to put it all on coaching staff. It's a collective thing. There's no one solution to all this right now. But Bryce has got to learn you got it sometimes. You know what? Harrison Smith comes free off the edge, a free blitzer. You know what? You can't always make that dude miss and try and extend the play. I get what you're trying to do. You're a kid. I totally get what you're trying to do. But in that situation, he's got to eat the football and take it.
So I'm not going to
eat the football and take it.
I'm not going to take away any blame from Bryce, right? Because there are certain things he can do better. But let's remember, this is his third game.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, 100%.
And
100%.
I want to make sure that the blame goes to where it needs to go to. Like, first off, Bryce Young can't block the defensive line.
Yeah.
And there's like literally that offensive line for the Carolina Panthers is just letting guys leak through. He
was
also
sacked 5 times in the second half. 5 times in the second half.
And 3 times from Harrison Smith alone.
Yeah.
And he also can't generate a run game. The run game was horrible.
Terrible.
And honestly, even with the horrible run game, Chuba Hubbard looks like the better running back for the Carolina Panthers. That's another thing that we could talk about another time.
Yeah.
And then also we talked about the play calling, and you're right. A lot of the stuff is underneath. There's a lot of times up there, like, and we were doing this at the Duke game where you're kind of like, oh, yeah, it's going to go to this, and it's going to be this play call. You could figure out it's going to be a screen to the left.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a screen to the right. This is going to be he's trying to look for Adam Thielen, but Adam Thielen can't get open, so he has Miles Sanders that he can dump the ball up to, and that's going to get 2 yards. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can see these types of things coming, and that's the part where it's like, I get it. Bryce shouldn't have fumbled at the same time, but like also look how fast. If you look at that play, look how fast the defender got to him, and look how fast DJ Wanham was there for the scoop and score with no other Carolina Panthers around. Is that Bryce Young's fault? In his 3rd game ever in his NFL career, there are so many other things that are happening around him that are just horrible right now. That I know Panthers fans are going to look around the NFL and say, "Man, we could have gotten C.J. Stroud, we could have gotten Anthony Richardson." But if those guys were in this same offense, they'd be going through a lot of the same things.
Exactly.
Right now 100%. That Bryce Young is going through.
100% with you on that. Now, again, he's got to learn, like, you know what? I got to protect the football. That's something he has to learn as well. But, yeah, it's not his fault that there's a free blitzer coming. They sent more than what was than they had to block. That's simply as that. That was Brian Flores. And here's the thing. And we'll get to the soundbite here in a moment from Miles Sanders.
I know what you're about to say.
Well, we also hear from wide receiver Adam Thielen, because you were in the locker room asking these questions. We heard Frank Reich say it post-game. We heard it from Bryce Young saying post-game. We'll also hear the soundbite from Miles Sanders. They knew what was coming.
They knew what was coming. They knew it.
And guess what? You knew.
And did nothing about it.
Exactly. Here's Miles Sanders, running back, talking about, hey, they knew what was coming.
Well, we know what type of defense like they run. They like to bring a lot of blitz zero and stack the line of scrimmage and make it pretty difficult. They gave us pretty much every look that we expected. I thought we did a pretty good job. It's just the urgency and the getting out of huddle stuff and delayed games is what's really killing us. Trying to get into a real rhythm. We can't really get into a real rhythm, and it's just not. Honestly, we're not playing good football right now. That's no point fingers at anybody, but everybody. It's not just one person. It's everybody that has to do with this. It's the whole offense, and it's something that we gotta change quick, or it's going to be the tell of our story this year.
All right, Miles Sanders brought up a really good point here, Chris, about something we saw from game 1 and game 2 about just getting out of the huddle faster and like getting play calls and all that kind of stuff in. The clock management and those kinds of things as a whole was just bad in this game. And there are a couple of situations I'll point out. There's actually one time in the postgame press conference, I know you heard this, Frank Reich said that they had to burn a timeout because he called a play.
And he didn't know Adam Thielen was in there.
But didn't know Adam Thielen was there. But, like, the play was only designed to go to him. That's like, well, we talked about the predictability of your offense. Well, no bleep. Like, clearly, like, you're just drawing up things for one guy, and we all can see it. And guess what?
Right.
So does your opponent. Because if you knew what they were doing, I guarantee they knew what you were doing. So that kind of stuff stood out. But also the clock management, like late in the first half. You mentioned the Kamo Grugier-Hill, the interception that he had.
Yep.
I forget, it was Etor Gross-Mato. So I actually thought he had a really good game today defensively overall.
Amazing game.
I thought it was his best game we've ever seen him play as a Carolina Panther.
Yeah.
But he hits Cousins, ball pops up. Grugier Hill intercepts it, gets the ball out kind of towards midfield. First play, pass over the middle, beautiful throw by Bryce Young. They pick up a nice 14, 15-yard pickup by Adam Thielen. That first play started at 34 seconds. Thielen's getting up off the ground at 28 seconds.
And they had 2 timeouts. Yes, 2 timeouts at that point.
2 timeouts. Tick, tick, tick. I'm thinking, I'm sitting on my couch doing the T. I'm like, timeout?
I'm doing the Shedeur Sanders.
Exactly. Like, hey, you do the Shedeur Sanders, throwing the watch up. Like, tick, like clock's ticking. I'm like, you have 2 timeouts. Like, you pick up that first one, timeout right here. You know what? Or at least after the turnover, you'd be like, we have 2 plays called, so we knew what was ready to come next. The next snap didn't happen until the clock was ticking from 12 to 11 is when the next snap happened. Like, that's literally like 16, 17 seconds wasted. Right. And they only got 1 more play after that. They went into the locker room with a timeout. They went full Roy Williams with this thing. We're going into the locker room with timeouts. I'm like, you can use your timeouts. You know? Like, you could do that. I'm like, why did you not call a timeout there? Because that 16, 17 seconds, that's 2 plays. That's 2 plays right there. You got to give yourself a chance to take a shot at the end zone. I'm like, that's terrible mismanagement. Then go late in the second half when they're trying to go for a game-time score, need a touchdown and a 2-point conversion, moving the ball down the field. But that sense of urgency, under 2 minutes, they just wasted a lot of time, not getting into the line of scrimmage quickly, not getting the plays, whatever it in quickly. The 2-minute drill was bad. And I actually thought sometimes, I think that maybe Bryce would actually excel in like an up-tempo offense, like get to the line quick. That way defenses just can't get set. But they wasted a bunch of time and actually had to burn a timeout, which guess what? You could have used that timeout after you turned the ball over on downs after Ike Ekwonu gives up another bad sack, which, also, by the way, the play before Bryce Young had the strip sack that was taken back for a touchdown. I know, here's the thing. I know I'm grooving here. I'm sorry, Chris. I know I'm getting long-winded. But the play before, Ike Ekwonu on a nice pickup that put the Carolina Panthers inside the 10-yard line, illegal man downfield, took away a nice gain. So it's like, it's self-inflicted wound. So it's like twice down in the red zone, Ike Ekwonu makes 2 major mistakes, you know? So it's like, what are we doing here, right? You know, it's just, they continue to make things harder for themselves. The Panthers do. They're making things harder and more difficult for themselves, and I don't get why, Chris. Sorry I got a little long-winded there.
So let's go back to the play calling, scheme, all that type of stuff, right?
Yeah.
If you notice, we talked about before when the offense generated its only points of the game to 3 points on that first drive. That's because that first drive a lot of times is scripted. You know the NFL. Like a lot of times you know what that first drive is going to look like when you come out as an offense. And it always feels like the Panthers, when they know what's happening, when they have the script to follow, when they have some tempo, they operate a little bit better. Now, I can't remember if it was the second or third quarter, but there was a pass where Bryce Young hit, I believe it was Terrace Marshall over the middle. And he gets it, runs for a little bit, drops it, falls on it. And for the Panthers to make sure that there's no challenge, they immediately get on the ball, and then they immediately get another first down.
Yes.
And that showed me right there that if you use a little bit of tempo, as you just mentioned, if you use a little bit of tempo, it helps Bryce Young out. He gets in a better groove. It probably also makes the defense a little tired. And one of the things I started noticing in the second half that the Minnesota Vikings were doing, and Harrison Smith was amazing at this.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm in the press box. I can't hear their cadences or their calls. But he was timing it up, man. There was times where, like, as soon as the ball is snapped, he's past the offensive line. Because, like, whatever it was, like, they're not doing anything different to put the defense in duress. They know what's coming. They understand what the call is, and he's getting to Bryce Young so fast. And it just really does feel like that Frank Reich is not putting him in a great position. And this is what this made me think of, right? Later on this season, we're going to talk to Boomer Esiason.
Yeah.
You remember when I talked to Boomer Esiason before the NFL draft, and he was saying, I know Frank Reich. That's my boy. They used to be roommates in college.
Yeah.
I know Frank Reich. That's my boy. He likes big quarterbacks. I don't think he wants to take Bryce Young. He said that to me in my interview with him, right?
Yeah.
And so it makes me wonder if Frank Reich has any faith in Bryce Young because if you remember what we heard from the Panthers coming into it, he had to be sold on Bryce Young.
Yeah.
It was Scott Fitterer. It was David Tepper, who already was sold on Bryce Young from a couple years ago, who was saying, hey, this is the guy that we want to take. So now you look at the 4 different games that they've played. Bryce Young started 3, Andy Dalton had 1. Why did it look like Andy Dalton had access to a whole different playbook than Bryce Young did?
Thank you.
It feels like Andy Dalton had an access to a whole different playbook that Bryce Young has had access to in 3 games. It really does feel like, and again, like media talks around here. And I'm talking to other people, and we're discussing this, and it's like, what's different between this? Like, what's different between the two? What can Bryce Young not do that Andy Dalton was able to do against Seattle? And it just looks like two different game plans for those guys. So it's just very interesting to see all that and for all that to come in, and it makes me have questioned Frank Reich and if he has any faith in Bryce Young, because again, that wasn't the guy that he wanted coming into it. He had to be, I guess, persuaded into being okay with what the owner and the general manager had already said they wanted a few years ago.
I'm 100% there with you. I actually texted you during the game. Because again, you're at Bank of America Stadium. I'm on my couch. I texted you during the game. Why does it feel like Andy Dalton has more freedom in this offense than Bryce Young?
Yes.
Why?
Yes.
Like because I texted you, it was like, where are the combination routes and more of the shots downfield and things like that? Like, where is that?
There's no motion. The offense is stagnant. Like, there was this one play in the second half where this is the only time I saw this, where Miles Sanders lined up as a wide receiver, motioned all the way around to the other side, and it was just a simple wheel route. He just simply did basically a semicircle behind, and he ended up gaining like 7 yards, right? And that was I think that was Miles Sanders' best pass play where he caught the ball. And I look at John Johnson from WXI next to me, and we're like, motion, caught the defense off guard. Nobody touched him until he already gained 5 yards. And it's like they didn't do that all game. And it's like, what's so hard about this? This is the modern NFL. Catch up, Frank Reich.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Okay. We talk about the receivers can't get separation, right? Well, one way you can help create some separation is by using motions and pre-snap stuff, because if I'm sending a guy in motion, he can cut up underneath, especially teams going man coverage. He can cut underneath another wide receiver. That's how you can get separation, from your defender. You do that, but also pre-snap motion also does another thing as well. It indicates to Bryce Young what the defense, like what their coverage is and things like that. You can start doing those. That's what pre-snap does, whether it's pre-snap shifts and or motions. That's what pre-snap motion gives you.
Yes.
So guess what? When you were going just slow and methodical, hey, let's line up. We're in our formation. I got 2 receivers over here. I got a tight end and 1 receiver here, and I got a back to my right. And I'm just looking around, right? And the other defense is just lined up. They're just waiting for you.
And that's why Harrison Smith was able to time things up and get to that backfield.
100%. 100%. Because you actually mentioned the thing about what the Terrace Marshall play, where he looked like he was an incompletion. They got to the line real fast, and they got a quick play going to prevent any sort of challenge call. Brady Quinn, who was on the call doing color commentary, goes, maybe they should do this for Bryce Young, because when you actually go at a little bit of a tempo, guess what it also prevents the defense from doing? Getting set up and actually okay, what blitz are we going to call? They have to keep things super basic because you can't sit there and call blitzers or shift guys around, whatever it might be. Things can get a little bit more basic and predictable. Maybe put your guys in position to do that. Again, I think Frank Reich right now as a whole, I will say this flat out, has done a crap job this season.
Oh, he has
done an absolute crap job. The fact that I could tell the fact that he doesn't trust Bryce Young right now. The very first pass play is a wide receiver screen. I'm like, what are we doing? It's the same thing. Nothing changed. Nothing got better. Nothing improved. Nothing opened up. He doesn't trust Bryce Young, and it stinks. Because guess what? You need to take the training wheels off of Bryce Young, Frank. Take the training wheels off him. Let the guy open up. He's got some talent. I know he's 5'10". Miss me with that stuff, folks. The guy can play if you let him have a chance. You got to let him have a chance to actually freaking play.
and we're going to get word salad from him, and he's going to, like, you know, if you actually look at some of this, right, like Panthers get 20 first downs, Vikings got 14. Panthers only got 232 yards, and so this would surprise you. They actually held the ball for 38 minutes and 29 seconds. That's time of possession for the Carolina Panthers. So when you have stuff like that, and they were able to keep the ball, even though they really didn't get a lot of yardage out of it, Frank Reich is probably going to look at that and say, oh, we were just a couple plays away. Bro, this is also the Minnesota Vikings. Like, they aren't really that good. No. And so you take away a few things, you give yourself a chance to score, and you should have probably won this game by a few scores, right? Like, probably could have won this game 31-14.
Yeah.
But you didn't, and it's because your offense doesn't work and you can't move it down the field, and you don't trust Bryce Young.
Hey, you talk about those few plays. We talked about, again, about red zone execution. Here's Adam Thielen, who's been their bright spot on offense as the veteran wide receiver that was brought in. Here's Adam Thielen talking about the lack of execution. And you asked this question to him, Chris. Here's Adam Thielen on the lack of execution in the red zone.
Yeah, we knew that this is a tough defense as far as they just bring a lot of crazy looks, a lot of pressure. They make it tough on you. They're not going to just sit back and play defense and show you what they're going to do. And so we just didn't execute on a few opportunities, and then you get pushed back and it's tough. So we got to find a way to continue to have positive momentum, and once we get in the red zone and to capitalize on the opportunities when we get them.
All right, Chris, that's the veteran, Adam Thielen, and he's one of the captains. He's one of the leaders of this team. I know he had some things to say about what he needs to do to make sure everyone else is on the same page.
Yeah, and this is, I think, one of the more poignant things that I heard today. And he was like, hey, we're 0-4, and I'm one of the captains on the team. So everything I do from here on out at practice, everybody else is going to look at. If a coach is coming down on me and coming harsh on me and I roll my eyes, or if I'm not listening to the coaches, people are going to see that. They're going to notice that. Yeah. He was saying if I'm not preparing the same way I prepared before week 1, people are going to notice that. If I pack it in like we're going to lose next week, then people are going to notice that and they're going to follow suit. And so he understands, and Miles Sanders said something very similar, but I think Adam Thielen kind of worded it the best way. It's like, hey, man, this is also going to be on the leadership right now. The leadership needs to make sure that they're showing that we are still in this, we are still engaged, and that we want to win, because it's very easy to look at that 0-4 record and just pack it in right now. Oh, yeah, the only other team who is winless are the Chicago Bears, and this only benefits the Chicago Bears right now because the Carolina Panthers would give their first-round pick to the Bears next year because of the trade for Bryce Young.
Yeah, simple as that. Simple as that. I know the defense only gave up 21 points today. Actually, they didn't give up 21 points. They only gave up 14 points because there's a defensive score. So both teams had a defensive score today. It's amazing the Panthers defense actually outscored their offense today. Imagine that when you think about it. Now they held Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson in that passing game. They kept them in check. They only completed 12 passes. Did the Minnesota Vikings today? Only completed 12 passes.
They're third in the league in passing yardage. That's the part that's it's just mind-blowing.
Well, it's not only that. They're third in the league in passing, and they get held in check. And this is with Dante Jackson going out during the game. This is with Sam Franklin starting in for Xavier Woods. Obviously, they're without J.C. Horn as well.
Without J.C. Horn, yep.
And so, okay, you're down with three of your starting 4 defensive backs from the beginning of this season. You're down those. But then also the running game that was 31st in the league for the Minnesota Vikings coming in today, 31st in yards per game, 31-32. Not very good. Puts up 120 plus.
You know what?
Wait a second here.
We're going to talk about the offense a lot and what the offense can be doing better, but Ejiro Evero also deserves a little bit of criticism in a few different areas. One, that run defense is just horrible. I mean, almost 6 yards per carry, only 23 carries and 135 yards. I was actually surprised that it was only about 6 yards per carry. It felt like it was 10 yards every time they ran the ball.
Yeah.
And that was just something that it was horrendous. The middle of that defense is way too soft. And then we also noticed, remember that sack that Jeremy Chin had?
Yeah.
He was blitzing. He was in the box, and he was blitzing from the middle. And I tweeted, good things happen when you put Jeremy Chinn in the box. And I really do feel like, and we've said this before, he's been underutilized, and he's been also, when he has been used the wrong way. And I think that sack really showed what you could do with Jeremy Chinn, especially with Shaq Thompson out due to his injury. And I think Ejiro Evero could do better with that. Also, Yetur Gross-Matos, he is growing in this defense. We might see him on the field a little bit more.
He was out there a lot as opposed to Justin Houston. He was out there quite a bit.
And we saw also DJ Johnson a few times in the first half. Why? We didn't need him. You don't need him there. And there was one, it was that second drive for the Minnesota
pick is what you're doing.
Second drive for the Minnesota Vikings. They had their two outside linebackers was Yetur Gross-Matos and DJ Johnson for the first 2 downs. And I was like, why? Now the Vikings didn't move the ball at all during that drive, so it ended up working out. But like, I'm not liking how Brian Burns isn't getting one-on-ones. I'm not liking how Brian Burns isn't on the field during some of these crucial times. I'm not liking how Brian Burns sometimes is being dropped in coverage. It feels like they're using Brian Burns wrong as well. So there's some criticism to go around on the defense as well.
Oh yeah, there definitely is. But credit to Sam Franklin. He had an early pass interference call that set up the Vikings in the red zone. Then he gets a pick six.
Made up for it.
More than made up for it. More than made up for him. Props to him in his first start, getting that big time play. But you know what? They still had a chance to win, did the Carolina Panthers, and nothing. They still got that goose egg. I don't know, Chris. There's a lot of things to figure out, but we're going to discuss this a little bit more this coming Thursday on the next episode of Panthers Playbook. Again, make sure you subscribe here on YouTube. Make sure that you leave comments. We want to know your thoughts, Panthers fans. Really do.
Yeah.
Vent. The comment section is out there for you to vent. Just vent. Keep it civil, but just go ahead and vent and smash that subscribe button as well. And Chris, drive back safe in Bank of America, please.
Thank you. I will.
Drive back safe. We'll see you Thursday for the next episode of Panthers Playbook.